Today on the interview, Nugget Bridge editorial staff discusses their Philadelphia Regionals experience, and we sit down with Philadelphia champ Matt Sybeldon, aka bearsfan092. All that today on the interview. Hi, welcome to the interview, part of the Nugget Bridge Radio Network. My name is Evan. You might better know me as Evan on the Nugget Bridge forums. I'm the editor-in-chief of NuggetBridge.com. I'm joined today by one of my tenacious but small editorial staff members, Alan, also known as Dubulous.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So both Alan and I attended the Philadelphia Regionals this past weekend, aka the hardest regional in all of North America. I believe
or so they say.
Official tournament rankings were what, 5 Garchomps and a Shedinja?
5 Garchomps and a Shedinja, that's right.
The 5 Garchomps were definitely there. The Shedinja, of course, did not manage to show up. But
yeah, I don't think anyone was running Shedinja.
Yeah,
it's like juniors or something.
You over-prepare for it and it never shows up, just like some community members.
Good one.
So we were at Philly. I'm a transplant to the Northeast. I was in the Midwest the entire time. Had you ever been to Philly before, Alan?
Not Philly Regional. I missed last year because I was in Australia.
Oh, right. So. Yeah, you were out of the country.
Yeah.
And
they didn't have any Australian tournaments, so I missed out.
Yeah, that's as good a reason to be, to miss the regional, I think.
Yeah. Well, but I did go to Newark and Washington, D.C.
Oh, right.
That was 2011.
Yeah, the 2011 D.C. Regional. We both attended that one. That was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah.
Of course, the format was different, so
much
it's
different.
Tough to compare.
Oh, so much better now.
Yeah, so much better.
So I guess we were both sort of going in there with, no map, really, as to what to expect.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Last year's regionals, I went to the Midwestern ones, Fort Wayne, Madison. They were okay. I was really impressed with how smoothly it went.
Yeah, I thought it went well too. They did a good job.
Yeah, we heard horror stories about Philly from last year, how it took 3 extra hours to get prepared, but the staff was on point. Everyone got registered quickly.
The only thing was the hack check.
Yeah.
That took 45 minutes at the beginning.
Yeah, hack check was something else, because they had way too many people getting disqualified, I guess. I was interested that they actually did the hack check after they gave us round 1 pairings, when, as I understand it, most of the other places had theirs at registration or during the players' meeting.
That ended up having an impact, too, overall, because all the players that got the wins, 1-0 for the bye, they had worse resistance by the end of it. So.
You had a bye the first round, right?
Yeah, I was one of those guys, and I ended up 6-2 and got 15th.
Hey, I didn't get those buys, and I ended up 6-2 and 18th, so...
Yeah, but, you lost earlier than I did.
That's true. Yeah, so doing it after pairings had the potential to tank people's resistances, which is...
Yeah, and if they could have just done it at the beginning when we were all registering, and it would have avoided that whole thing, but...
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, whatever.
It was still an improvement. It wouldn't
Overall,
be Pokemon if we didn't...
not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
They went super smooth.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Pokemon if we didn't have something to complain about and to improve upon for the next region.
We need TVs. That'll be next year.
Need TVs, hack check at registration, probably the 2 biggest ones. But otherwise, I think Philly went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, definitely.
Were you surprised by anything you saw? Any teams? Anything cool? I know we were both running pretty similar, Franken teams, but
we were running, I guess, some more standard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really see any. I didn't battle personally anything really off the wall. I heard that there was a Regigigas that did really well.
Yeah.
It was a Worry Seed Regigigas team.
Yeah, I remember that rumor getting around there. I forget who it was talking about how he just got stomped by it. Which I enjoyed a lot.
I know Soul
awesome.
Survivor played him.
Yeah.
And got stomped by, because he just didn't, he saw Regigigas and was like, oh, Regigigas.
So every year
there
has to be, every year there's a Regigigas team. Isn't that what Wolf brought last year?
I'm not sure.
He brought Lilip this year, so who knows what he's bringing. I think the big story out of Philly was seniors, graduating seniors.
Yeah, graduating seniors. Toller and of course Aaron did well.
Yeah, Nitesh also.
Exactly.
And Mosquito. So we had, in the top 8, we had 4 seniors who graduated this year. If you include Enosh, that brings up to 5 in the top 8 since he graduated the year before.
Wow. Making us look bad.
Yeah, making us look bad. But top 4 ended up being 3 formerly graduated seniors, including Enosh, plus our guest tonight, Matt Sybeldon, who ended up taking the title away from the senior invasion, keeping it in the house, in Masters, making sure that the young upstarts didn't take over.
Good job, Matt.
And we're joined by Matt here now. Hey, Matt.
Hey,
how are you
guys.
doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Congratulations on your championship in Philadelphia.
Yep, thanks.
AKA the hardest regional. It's interesting because I remember first, meeting you through your RNG videos on YouTube. You pretty much single-handedly taught me how to RNG for 2010 for the Diamond, Pearl, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. When did you switch from, doing primarily RNG stuff to, competition?
I actually had been playing VGC since 2009, which I think was the most fun year, even though I never attended an event. I just kind of played casually until about 2011, and that's when I first showed it to Nationals. And then 2012 at Nationals last year was kind of a disappointment, and I kind of just redoubled my efforts and showed up to play at Regionals.
What happened at Nationals last year?
I actually went 4-4. I think I kind of went with a weak team, but I got a little bit dejected once I basically lost the opportunity to top cut, and then I just played really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all been in that situation where you drop like 1 or 2 pretty early on, and you know that even if you win out, your opponent's resistance is probably going to be a little weak. So it's tough to keep it up, keep up the motivation for the
That being
entire
said,
tournament.
round 1 versus Scott is the worst way to start any tournament ever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very fair. Who incidentally gave you a very glowing review in his What We Learned Regionals Retrospective Day.
Yeah, I read that. I'm not used to being in the spotlight, really. So, thanks, Scott, for writing such kind words. That's all I can say, I guess.
Yeah, you should probably get used to it.
That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Often enough that it's still special, but it's just definitely cherish it for now.
Yeah, usually it's just people saying, "Oh, thanks for helping me RNG," but it's kind of nice. I actually did something.
So, you've been a long-term member of the community. We've talked a little bit about this, but this was your first regional. I know you've attended Nationals 2011, 2012. Were you at Nationals in 2010? I can't remember.
No, I tried, but I couldn't make it.
Yeah, so this was your first regional experience. How did it feel coming, you've previously only attended these high-level nationals, national tournaments. How did regionals compare to that?
I think skill level wise, I ran into pretty similar to nationals. If you just go down the roster of the seniors that we had there, personally, I played Jive Time, Human, Dim Sun, all during Swiss. So I think that skill level wise, it was pretty comparable to nationals.
Yeah, that's a tough schedule.
Yeah.
Well, that'll happen when you're winning every game that you play.
Yeah, if you're playing good opponents, you're doing something right generally. But social-wise, it's different. It's so much more about Pokemon than about... I mean, it's good to see your friends, but it's a lot more Pokemon-centric than Nationals.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I remember, actually, you, me, and Alan, we all went out for pho, and that was about one of the only experiences I had, just to, sit down and hang out with people, as opposed to focusing on the competition, which is completely different from Nationals. Granted,
it was a nice change of pace, though.
Yeah. I mean, granted, my Nationals performance is usually so bad that I get to spend a lot more time hanging out with people, but...
Yeah, we've all been there.
One of the best things about failing at Nationals is it just means you have more time to hang out with your friends.
Yeah, it's always a good... I don't want to say consolation prize, but, it's something to look forward to.
So, we've talked a little bit about the competition at Philly. You had a really rough schedule. I know that Human had one of the hardest schedules I've seen. He ended up being the undefeated. You guys played the last round. I don't know. A lot of people like to talk about how strong Philadelphia is, but if you look at all of the other regions too, Alan mentioned this, how if you're playing tough people, that means you're doing something right. Every region, with the possible exception of Toronto, had a pretty deep field. Like Fort Wayne, I think was one of the densest. But I don't know. Was there any region you didn't want to compete against just because they had some really tough trainers?
I don't want to go to Fort Wayne because I don't want to play Scott for the umpteenth time. And going back to your point about Toronto, I don't think that was that weak of a field, actually, because we had D-Train, we had TDS playing, Dan and Simon, for those of you talking on a first-name basis. And, we give the Canadians, a hard time saying, like, oh, they're not as good, but in the end, a Canadian took it. So I think we underestimated that regional.
Yeah, I think that's true of Canada in general.
Yeah. And really, it's a toss. As far as my least favorite, it's definitely between Fort Wayne and Houston, which was just dominated by Team Magma.
Yeah, Team Magma _ really, really went to town on Houston. That was incredible.
Yeah. And they've run some really creative teams. I love their work. I really do.
Alan, was there any place you didn't really want to hit? Or were you happy to be in Philly? Or?
I mean, honestly, it doesn't. I don't think it really matters at this point because there are so many good players everywhere you go. Compared to like 3 years ago, you kind of knew who was going to come out of the regionals, and you kind of do still know who the good top players are. But year after year, or especially this regional, we saw just a lot of different people coming out with really good teams.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected the seniors to do quite as well as they did, which was definitely a surprise.
Yeah, and we kind of underestimate them because they, were in seniors last year, but they're just as good at players as they're definitely master quality.
And they've been playing with us for the past 2 years.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not like they're only playing against each other.
If I may add something though,
of course,
they've been playing with us for how many years now? Like, Aaron started out as a junior, I believe. Is that right? And he was probably playing against us to some degree. And looking at the Fort Wayne seniors champion Brian Hoff, is that right?
Something like that. How?
Yeah, I don't know.
Hopefully you didn't butcher your name.
Yeah, well, he's been playing Masters, like against Masters online for a good 2-3 years now, and I bet he could probably hold his own. It's like even Babytron won a live tournament, for Christ's sake. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We have this, strata of this tiering of competition, but the skill level probably isn't all that different. And I think that this past regional was a pretty big wake-up call for some people. Even though, of course, only one graduated senior, Cameron Jahadi, Cams, managed to take a regional. A lot of graduated seniors challenged, and I know that your battles with Cybertron, with Aaron Zhang in the finals, those were some amazing battles. And that was just high-level play on both sides.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of gutsy calls made during that. Props to Aaron for being a great opponent.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to having already gotten some of those videos. I know that you guys have done some commentary for them.
Yeah, at the moment we've done Game 1, and we're contemplating doing Game 2 and 3.
Great. That's awesome. You should do those. Those would be great. So now that we're talking about your finals matches, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the team that you used, which, incidentally, you can view exclusively on nuggetbridge.com. I mean, looking over it, it's not a terribly groundbreaking team, but there are a few things that really stand out to me, the few twists that you put on it. The first, I think is the most obvious, is you have 3 Pokemon carrying both Substitute and Protect. Most players choose to do one or the other, and using that last spot for a coverage attack that hits, more types of Pokemon harder, but you've decided to double up on them. What was your thought process for doing both of those defensive moves?
Well, in VGC, especially when you're using Fake Out, there are so many wasted turns and half turns that you could be using for some sort of setup. It's what makes certain Calm Mind Pokemon playable.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking for a way to utilize those down turns in some ways. So I figured getting free substitutes on turns where otherwise I would just be attacking into protects was a lot better than just sitting there.
Yeah, and you've got a substitute on Pokemon like Tyranitar, which is, something, I think TDS, I think Simon used that too in Canada, but it's something that's not seen that often. But if you let Tyranitar get a free substitute up, that's a pretty scary Pokemon to have to deal with.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I picked Tyranitar is when I was testing Tyranitar on PO and GBU a lot, I found that I only used the coverage move like maybe 3 or 4 times, whether it be low kick or fire
Mhm.
punch. So I figured I'm just gonna get rid of it and throw on substitute, and it happened to work out. And I'm glad to see someone else came up with the idea independently and did so well. Simon's a good player, and I guess great minds think alike.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people use those coverage moves like Fire Punch specifically for Scizor. That's all it's got. But you get up a substitute in Scissor's face, and all of a sudden it has to worry about eating a rock slide before it can get you out of the way, and then theoretically you have a partner next to it. So it sort of gets the same idea across, just in a more defensive fashion than offense.
Right.
The second thing that I really noticed about your team, and we've had a little bit of a pretty impassioned debate over it on the forums recently, is that yours is one of the few successful teams that isn't running Cresselia. We talk about Cresselia, and it's arguably the most dominant force in the metagame, just because of its natural defensive power and ability to go offensive. Like Aaron used a very offensive Cresselia against you. But what was it about Cresselia that kept it off your team?
Well, unless you're running offensive Cresselia or maybe shout out to Light Screen. I find Cresselia to be kind of dead weight on a lot of my teams. I don't know if it's just my playstyle.
Mm-hmm.
It probably is, because considering most of the world's teams had it. But I just figured with what I was trying to do that the slots could be used for like Intimidate support. That's why I put Gyarados in over Cresselia as a Thunder Wave user. Or just something a bit more offensive, which is why Scissor's on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want so much support on the team. I guess Cresselia just wasn't what fit.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned Gyarados, because that was the last thing about your team I really wanted to talk about. Your Gyarados set is really interesting. It's sort of this weird mix of offense and defense on it. I remember watching your first finals match against Aaron, and when you left your Gyarados in against his Thundurus, thought, oh, he must be carrying Wackenberry, which halves damage taken by electric type attacks. Because otherwise, why would you leave it in? Only to see you hit him with a Water Gym boosted Waterfall. But the rest of the Gyarados is so defensive. It's Thunder Wave, Roar, and Protect. What was the decision to sort of mix up the offensive Water Gym plus this really defensive, bulky sort of set?
Water Gym was actually something that we had tested on Syed Cameron's Nationals team. I built a team for him. And it was just something that I had noticed was hitting surprisingly hard. Like, Water Gem makes a lot of 2-hit KOs possible. So I just like that I can have this really reliable coverage. Well, Water's got decent coverage. And I could just smack something really hard if I had nothing better to do. As far as the rest of the set, Roar was, it's pretty obvious that it's anti-Trick Room. And I actually got a chance to use it in my top 8 match against my opponent. I forget his name. But he was running Trick Room Hail Surf Spam. It was a really cool team.
Mm-hmm.
But
Wait, you actually got off an anti-Trick Room Roar?
Yeah, I faked out his slower Hitmontap, and I got the Roar off against his Jellicent. It was amazing. Wow.
That's something you always hear about, but I don't think I've ever heard of anyone actually pulling it off.
Yeah, the thing was, his Surf Spam also consisted of Politoed Kingdra, and Gyarados is a pretty decent matchup against both of those anyway with Thunder Wave. So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I managed to get one off.
Yeah, Gyarados makes a surprisingly strong rain counter as long as they aren't running a Rotom. Because Kingdra just runs water and dragon type, sometimes ice, and Politoed runs water, ice, sometimes grass for Gastrodon. And you look at Ludicolo, just runs grass, water, and ice. It's a pretty underrated Pokemon, I think, for things like that.
Yeah, and just that Intimidate is so nice to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Intimidate gives it some great utility against, just good stuff teams in general, relying on their Garchomps and Tyrannitars.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic Tyranitar and Garchomp answer. Just switching in and then threatening a waterfall for at least some solid damage.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's all I've got on teams. Alan, do you have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I know you decided to actually run this team the night before. You
That's
had
right.
A bunch of wholesale changes.
That's
You want to talk
right.
about that?
Yeah, I was actually talking with a few people, Dim Sum, Deagle, and plus just a few other people, and I was just talking about teams, and we were talking about running Spec Zapdos, Scarf Chandelure, and Amoonguss. That was basically the core on that team.
Okay.
And I was actually losing to just people I didn't know at the regional, which is a very bad problem to have.
Was this
The day
during
before the competition, yeah.
Was this during TCG?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this team is not working right now. So I thought about it for a while, and I sat out in the hallway, and I was just typing just throwing ideas out on Notepad, and I happened to see something that kind of worked, and I was like, okay, well, why don't we just put substitute on everything?
It turned out to not be a bad strategy.
Yeah, that worked out all
Yeah,
right.
so basically my entire thought process the day before was, what can you substitute and protect, because that makes for excellent mind games, and only really needs 2 moves to attack. And that's a big reason why Heatran and Tyranitar are on there. And then Latios isn't really doing anything much besides maybe the rare hidden power fire.
You have Heatran was one of those Pokemon that got a huge boost coming off of Worlds, largely on the success of Wolf's Worlds team. I know that Alan and I were both running variants of the Levitate Heatran.
Yeah, we both ran the same Heatran.
Yeah, that's right. You actually
Such a
ran
good set.
my Heatran. I forgot about that.
Exact copy.
Yours is a lot faster and much more offensive than the standard. I guess let's go ahead and call it Wolftran, because why not? So you've got the 252 special attack modest plus fire gem, and then 204 speed. So that's a much more offensive version of Heatran, which sort of mixes with your Gyarados, which has the water gem and a bunch of defensive moves, but also a lot of attack investment. But why did you decide to go with the really hard-hitting, quick, fast Heatran offensive?
Well, the main thing when I was making the speed EVs, I really was thinking about Hitmontop, because you will not believe how many people run max speed Hitmontop with Adamant. I even saw a couple jolly ones on PO. And those actually threw me for a loop, but I wasn't going to EV for those.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the idea is Fire Gem Heatwave can't KO Hitmontop from +0, but they're going to go for a close combat usually. So if you can block the close combat with Substitute and drop their defenses, then you can drop them with a Fire Gem boosted Heatwave, hopefully. Maybe with a little damage from your partner. On top of that, it was just there are some Pokemon that I've run into during testing, like Breloom, who think they can outspeed Heatran for some reason, and I end up blocking the Spore with Substitute. And it's also good for speed tying other Heatrans and smacking them with Earth Power, providing they're not Wolf Heatrans. Yeah. So the speed was really, really useful, and I don't regret going that direction.
Let's talk a little bit about each of your top cut matches. You mentioned your top 8 match. You played against the Surf Hail Trick Room team. You were able to get, roar off. Who did you play top 4 again? Was it
I played
Mosquito?
Mosquito, right.
Yeah.
And he was rocking it was kind of standard rain team. He was running sub LO Kingdra.
Oof.
I think Skarm ran that at Nationals. Is that right?
Something like that. It was either, I can't remember if they were running Substitute on their Nationals Kingdra or if it was only at Worlds. But yeah, that's a tough Pokemon.
Yeah, well, basically, between my top 8 and my top 4 matchups, they were basically my most feared matchups because my team doesn't particularly enjoy rain.
Mm-hmm.
It can play against it, but it's not a fun match.
Outside
Christian's
of Gyarados, how does your team take on?
Well, he's got Tyranitar.
Tyranitar changes the weather, and if it's not raining, then Scissor, Hitmontop, Tyranitar, and Gyarados form an okay core to fight against rain with, and Latios can do okay as well. As a matter of fact, Latios was basically the MVP of my top 4 match because I did a bunch of substitute mind games against Christian, who, and I managed to stay on the field long enough, and I was actually using Psychic pretty much the entire match. But Latios was really useful there. Really, the only one who doesn't match up, who has a terrible matchup against Rain, is Heatran. So, I mean, you can work with a 5 Pokemon team because, quite frankly, that's what I end up doing most of the time when I make an awful team.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Well, you can only use 4 anyway, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, 5 Pokemon isn't that terrible.
Oh yeah, and I'd also like to mention Wide Guard from Hitmontop kind of helps mitigate the Surf Spam a bit, and that's useful for some stuff.
Yeah, I remember you talking to me about how useful Wide Guard was in your top cup matches.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my team, there's just so many spread moves that can hit them, which maybe I should have thought about that a bit more. But Rock Slide hits Gyarados, Earthquake hits Heatran and Tyranitar, and Surf just hits pretty much my entire team for neutral. So Wide Guard was really useful to have, and it was something that I ended up using twice during my top 8 match, and it also, like, it wasn't just when I used it, but it was when people knew I had it, but I wasn't using it because they were a lot more hesitant to use spread moves.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of the interesting things about VGC 13's Top Cut is that now at regionals we have best of 3, whereas previously you could only get best of 3 experience if you Top Cut nationals or played in the Worlds LCQ or made it to Worlds. Did you build? I mean, you built the night before, but did you build with an eye sort of towards some of those best of 3 mind game shenanigans?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, basically the main reason I changed my team beyond, losing to quote unquote randoms is it just
not
wasn't
randoms, great trainers we don't know yet.
Precisely. Like I hate to use that term, but it's just something. It's become part of the vernacular. But the team I was running before, like, once you get past the surprise of Scarf Chandelure and Spec Zapdos, it's a lot harder to fight back. And this team is something that it's got a little bit of surprise and substitute, not a lot, but the Pokemon are bulky enough to where they can fight back even if my opponent knows what sets I'm running.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of those interesting things that I think gets a little bit glossed over in some of the team building, usually for a good reason, because in the past we've only been playing best of 1 at regionals. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people's team building shifts going into, knowing that even at regionals they're going to potentially have to go in best of 3 situations.
Yeah, it's definitely it changes the way you approach a regional. It requires a bit smarter play.
Yeah, because I know, like, in previous years you could just build a really good Trick Room team and count on just being able to run through the gauntlet. You can't really do that this year.
Yeah, once someone knows that you're running basically heavy Trick Room, they'll know what you like to bring and how you can counter it. Possibly even with exactly. Roar Gyarados.
Well, look for a rise of good stuffs from here on out. I mean, even the trainers we don't know, for the most part, they were running good stuffs.
So, we just got through probably our last rule set of the VGC 12, black-white metagame. We don't know what's going to come for VGC 13 next, or we don't at the time of recording. Do you have any preference on what metagame you'd like to see for next regional?
I'm going to have to say VGC 2012, basically GBU doubles. So basically what the rule set we have now, plus Move Tutors and Therian forms. I've actually been playing a little bit of it's Beginning Cup, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Beginning. Not
right.
Beginners.
Right. And Some of the Pokemon are a little difficult to stop, primarily Thunderous Therian form.
Hmm.
I think we could use some of the tools we have in VGC 2012 to stop that. I think it's manageable there, but I found it really difficult to take like a Specs Thunderbolt with some of the Pokemon I had available.
That really surprises me that you would think that Thunderous Therian was the problem in Beginning Cup, because, it loses its, best friend Politoed, which gives it 100% accurate Thunders and now gets Helping Hand alongside Drizzle.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, but I think Rain could still exist in the Beginning Cup metagame because you still have the prankster Tornadus who can set up if anything. And even if you don't have Thunder, you've got Thunderbolt, which still hits a lot of stuff pretty hard. And I'd like to just take this moment to say that while Landorus Therian form is gonna be really good next year, I think I think a lot of people are overhyping how good it will be because you can just run a lot of random ice moves, and barring that, there's still stuff like I actually found Hypercutter Gliscor was a decent Landorus counter.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think Landorus Therian is a little bit overhyped. I know testing for regionals, inevitably came up against a few of them in GBU and on Pokemon Online, but never really gave me too much trouble, which is why I guess I'm a little bit surprised by your analysis of Thundurus, because Heavy Rain in GBU doubles looks really strong to me.
Yeah, it's they're both really good Pokemon. Don't get me wrong. Landorus is something you should be very afraid of next year.
Well, we have that to look forward to, I guess.
We have Landorus to look forward to.
That being said, hope for VGC 2012 plus. That's what I'm calling it.
Alan, do you have any opinions on the next format?
I hope we get VGC 12 plus as well. I hate the restrictions that Beginning Cup kind of imposes.
Then we're unanimous.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I love it when everyone comes together.
Yeah, no debate.
Now, I haven't actually played either yet, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think it'll be a lot easier to team build if you have more available.
Just curious, what do you guys think of the whole Gravity Sableye craze? Or the hype?
Gravity is going to be fun. I think it's good. I don't think it's as good as people are hyping it.
I love Gravity as a concept.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun.
I like Musharna as a Gravity user more than Sableye.
Yeah, Musharna has potential to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about Gravity being a little too one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there are a lot of good moves that could use that accuracy boost, even if you're not using something like Grass Whistle, Prankster, Whimsicott.
Yeah. I think that the accuracy boost is really underselling Gravity, because I think the big selling point for Gravity is being able to hit flying types and levitators with ground
Down
type
with
attacks.
Wolfie-Tran.
Yeah, no Levitate Heatran, Zapdos, Thundurus, Rotoms all hate taking an Earthquake.
Even stuff like Bronzong.
Yeah, even Bronzong hates it.
Like random stuff that you're not really going to think of.
I think
That's
you'll
a good
see
point.
Rhyperior and Musharna being a really popular core for Trick Room teams. Because not only can Musharna Trick Room and Gravity, but after it Gravities, it gets Hypnosis and disables anything that would survive a Rhyperior Earthquake.
Oh, that's true. It does get Hypnosis, doesn't it? Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about Gravity Sableye, but maybe Gravity Musharna.
Yeah, that's a very legitimate point.
So I think that'll be fun. And you'll get that in Beginning Cup and in GBU doubles. Unless Rhyperior didn't make it. But in which case, just replace it with something else.
Yeah, so like
Crocodile.
anything hard-hitting and Earthquake using.
Yeah, bring your Chesto Berries.
Bring your Chesto, bring your Shucka.
Yeah.
No balloons. All right, well, thanks for joining us, Matt. Alan, thanks for talking with us today. I think this was a very enlightening, great, deep, all that conversation. Congratulations again on your championship, and we'll be seeing you at any other regionals?
I'm about 50-50 on attending Virginia, and I probably won't be able to attend spring because of approaching finals. But I will definitely be at nationals.
Alan?
We'll see in Virginia.
Awesome. I'll be at Virginia too. Maybe we can, do a reunion, do another one after I win Virginia.
We'll get another big bowl of pho.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the largest bowl of pho you've ever seen in Virginia. Alright, well this has been the interview. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time with more interviews, only on nuggetbridge.com. This has been a Nugget Bridge Radio Network production. For more information about our podcasts and in-depth analysis of the VGC circuit, visit www.nuggetbridge.com.